Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is May 16th, 2017, 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for hanging in there. Yesterday was a super hard day, and I apologize for yesterday's show. And let me give a shout out to Chuck Ocelli, and I apologize to him too. I was supposed to guest with him on his show, and I had such a horrible day. My computer was out, as you know, first thing. So thanks for hanging in there with me. Today we have with us a returning guest to our show, Nancy Newel, who's a Northwest activist I met through Mimi Gurman. Nancy, I want to jump right into it because we don't have that much time. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I guess what's on everybody's mind is the Hanford update, right? Except that after Friday, Heidi sort of made me realize like this is sort of standard fare. And over at the Hanford site, they seem to agree. They're back on regular work schedule.
They got all the other workers back in?
Yeah, it says they're on work schedule. They're saying the Hanford site is on regular work schedule today. A controlled access area around the Purex facility in the 200 East area is still in place for implementation of recovery actions.
Yeah, that's an important sentence because it means they're understaffed. You know, they
this
won't
is
allow certain staff having exposure to the radiation.
Right. They're saying employees working in the following facilities within this area are to report to work at alternate locations identified by their managers. And then it gives a big laundry list of buildings or departments, you know. So it's probably quite a few people that can't go back to work where they were working.
Yeah. One of my problems has been they're hacking my internet and they're hacking my phone. So if something happens, that may be what's going on. But the lack of information is very similar to the 3 Mile Island experience that we had for 3 days. And this is worse because they're literally covering up, with soil, which is ludicrous, these spent fuel rods that emit tremendous amounts of radiation. And they were supposed to meet a deadline that Jerry Paulette, he's a lawyer, Heart of America in the state of Washington, and now he's a state legislator. They have not met the deadline of some of his requirements for measuring the emissions that are coming out of that area. And they refuse to even use proper equipment to give the public an honest answer, which is criminal. And they should all be arrested, including the governor of the state of Washington, as far as I'm concerned, because
do you think he knows
about exposures that the human body cannot withstand.
But do you think the governor knows?
Of course he does. Sure.
You don't think he's
all the information is out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but you don't think he's misinformed? You don't think he's like believing them when they say, oh,
everything's fine. We've got it under control. Like, I follow his tweets, and he's like, things are fine. We're so proud of our people for making this work. Blah, 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 blah.
No, he's just a politician.
You think he knows?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think do you think our Congress knows? I think that they completely believe the lies. I don't believe that they know.
They want to believe. A lot of them just want to believe it. A lot of money involved here. You're talking about Westinghouse went bankrupt. The United States of America is bankrupt. We've got seas in the China seas. We've got warships. Not many people even know that. We are in a state of emergency. We're in such major debt in the United States. And to put this on top of that and be able to talk about it as a political representative, I mean, this is part of the problem. And it was predicted by the Dr. John Goffman and Dr. Helen Caldecott in the 70s, and they wrote this wonderful book together called The Revy. And the state.
I have that book, and I've read parts of it on this. I've read parts of that on this show here. I have referred to it. He has a section in there where he's like, look, we have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the nuclear industry has taken that away from us. That alone should shut it down, because them pouring radiation all over and radioactive contamination everywhere, that means that they have really literally impeded our rights to life and happiness and liberty. Because when you're handicapped, when you have problems, we may have great medical facilities. See, this is always their argument. Well, we have great medical facilities. We can cope with any of the damage that it's doing. Really, tell that to the little girl that we saw in the movie. What's this? I'm trying to get the director of this show on the show. Crying Earth, Rise Up. There is a little girl in this movie that was born without an anus. And they are coping with it. And she needs a new kidney. And she lived right down the street from uranium mining. And nobody told their family.
Well, that's exactly what the culture is. There's a birth center right there in Richland that denies that they have a problem with radiation. And they won't talk about it. This is midwives that take care of babies and births.
Have you ever tried to talk to them? Have you brought them Dr. John Goffman's books?
Oh, I did. They hung up on me.
Did you bring them their books, his books, though?
They didn't want them.
Well, maybe we'll just mail them to them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah. But, I mean, this has been known for a long time. The United States is the most invested in nuclear with its wars and its electric energy. And Westinghouse parading around the world with all its, our monies, our tax dollars going to their corporate welfare. And now they're bankrupt.
Well, yes, but look, Westinghouse as a company is bankrupt, but their assets are being bought out by other companies who know how to handle it, right? I mean, they use bankruptcy as a tool to basically skirt tax law or liability laws.
Well, that may be, but the point being is that this stuff doesn't work. Why are we still playing with it? Why are we still running that nuclear power plant 10 miles away from where this disaster is ongoing?
It's only 10. I thought it's 10 miles away. I thought it was 15. I guess it doesn't matter, 10 or 15. That's still dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and any emissions like that, and to put money into continuing the whole beginning of the process, don't create waste. It's so simple today. All the answers are here. Just go visit the German chancellor, invite her in. She's closed 3 of them already after Fukushima, nuclear power plants. And here we are diddling around in Oregon and Washington.
Digging in.
And, Seattle did take the steps to get off, and now the city of Portland on June 1st is going to go to alternatives completely. And so, I mean, we are taking actions. We just have to keep getting out the truth so that when an accident like this happens, everybody knows for real how very extremely, like we always said, dangerous opening up the atom and distributing the waste all over the place. In our water, in our air. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Everybody knows this. And we've got to stop it. It's just, we have to go to all the things as fast as we can. to get off these awful producing, horrible, destructive action, and you have to watch it for thousands of years.
Right. We haven't even watched it for 100. We haven't even made it 100 years yet. And it's now like, but this is why they're digging in, though, Nancy. It's the same disregard. See, they are really literally with the, anti-environmentalists. They believe that that doesn't matter if we spread it around because we're going to create solutions to the problems. We haven't invented them yet, but as humans, we know we're going to because we always do. Literally, this is their arguments. It's a complete, like I say, we're living in the 51st state of the United States is the state of denial.
Well, and it's corporate welfare of the big multinationals. I mean, Westinghouse is not welcome around the world except for poorer countries,
And that's only because of the United States.
I mean, what is this all about?
But that's only because of the United States. Because the United States shoved Westinghouse down their throats. They didn't say, oh, please come here and destroy our environment. It's always been the United States offers a stick. They go in, they destroy their countries, they undermine their governments, and then they say, well, we'll help you, but you have to do what we say. And that's essentially what they do. This is what John Perkins outlined in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is how they basically, and they destroyed Maduro's country. Like Maduro was democratically elected. He is not a tyrant the way he's put out into this. But, this is the thing. The way they've got it is there's really seriously, our military money is literally undermining many countries. And it reflects back in our nuclear. This whole thing is kind of intertwined, Nancy. This is what I've realized over the last 2 years of doing all these interviews is like, we can't separate the nuclear pollution from the war machine or from the chemical industry. Including Monsanto and Bechtel, even though most people put Monsanto in with GMOs, even the GMO and the geoengineering, that whole thing of that whole quote mystery, because it's a science, like they're doing something they're not telling us. Like that is, we're on a need to know basis and we don't need to know story. So we know that all that came about all about the same time that nuclear did. Like they went on Balco around that same time in terms of like strangling the American Constitution and subsequently the American people. We have really literally, this is why I love this title of this movie. I've seen the documentary. I actually have it on my television. I DVR'd it and I just kept it for like a million years. It's called Crying Earth, Rise Up. It's a documentary. I recommend it to everybody. It's on Amazon, I'm pretty sure. But you can find it around. It's called Crying Earth, Rise Up. And it is about the uranium mining that's going on, I think, in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, that area around there. And it's about the Lakota people and how they are.
And they violated all the treaties that they are supposed to
everything. And the disregard, oh my gosh. And so the citizens there, they're and you know what, they're winning in court. They're using the law. People there are getting educated. They are using the law and they are spreading the word. And that's what this story is about, this one mother's journey to she's now a geologist because she was trying to figure out she felt like it was her fault. Maybe she did something wrong that caused this horrendous birth defect and all these trouble that her daughter had. And then she realized, wait a minute, no, the whole thing was related to literally fracking, complete disregard for the law, the uranium mining, the whole thing. You know how they uranium mine, they go dig down, and it's kind of like fracking how they do it, to be honest. It's the same kind of technology. So... Yeah. Well, Nancy, this is the thing. I sit in a classroom a couple times, 4 days a week now, with a set of students, all of them, even the ones that are political scientists and, studying political science. And this is why they can't face it. They want to do the environmentalism. They want to be environmentalists. They want to save the water, save the trees, but they don't understand anything about nuclear and how catastrophic it is. And when they do understand it, when a few of them have talked to me, they just glaze out. It's so overwhelming, the thought of what we have done to our planet when it hits them. How do we, as you've been doing this for a long time, what would you suggest to people who are just now hearing this and realizing holy crap, we've been super screwed? Like, what keeps
Uh,
you going? You know, like, what makes you not just give up and go, you know what, if it's that bad, I might as well just go back to my life.
well, you know what? We've got all these brilliant minds, and they're young, and they're out of Corvallis, where they promote small modular reactors still in total
Oh,
stupidity and
speaking of small
financial
modular
control. But
reactors,
but yeah, but the alternatives. You ask me why I keep going is because it's all there, and then you get great news after Fukushima that somebody in the world, a woman, is standing up in Germany and closing those and going rapidly with our same climate. Germany has the same climate just about, and proves it. You can go into energy efficiency and alternatives, not natural gas, and solve the problem practically overnight. So what the heck is wrong with our culture here? That's what bugs me. And I know CH2M Hill's influence. I know what they lied about in our bowl
so
run water.
who's
Some of the best
T2H? You said,
water in the world.
wait. You're throwing something in there. First two
Yep.
things. 2HTM, what's that?
CH2M Hill has made a ton of money on Hanford. They also train our PSU students on that, as well as our drinking water that's been that great for, I guess, almost 100 years now, Bull Run drinking water coming off of Mount Hood. And the fluoride, brought up the fluoride to make money off of fluoride. This is CH2M Hill. Waltzing around a PSU just a few blocks away, waltzing over to City Hall. And their influence and money is endless, just like Westinghouse. Now, all that money, that we put into it, we have to be smarter in what goes and how it goes, our money. And young people are starting to get attuned to that. And it's so shut down in the press now. We at least had some press when we never let that Shoreham nuclear plant operate on Long Island. And the press is now very difficult to get information
Well,
out.
There's only one person, and that's Susanna Frame up at King 5. I've only hear about her. I don't hear about anybody else. No one else. And that probably speaks to the manager of her station, the person who runs that station probably has enough money that he doesn't give a crap. But I do, when you're speaking about suppression right now, I noticed the other day, yesterday when I was doing the show, I was by myself, and I went to the NRC website. On the comments page, under the dockets, there's a comment on their waste there was a comment section still open, folks, to put in comments about the SMR waste disposal. So go to the dockets page, go there and take a look. Go and look at that and make your comments about the nuclear waste.
Great idea. Yeah.
I mean, our comments matter. This is one of the things I've learned from Donna Gilmore and from you. Our participation matters a lot with the people that are making these decisions. And it doesn't take a lot of people. I mean, 200 people in a city of several million shut down San Onofre. There was enough people. It was only 200 people. How many millions? 53 million?
It was only 20.
Right.
Stop Shoreham from ever operating. Well, they low power tested it. You know what? I mean, they illegally brought the rods in when they were told not to, and low power tested against the law, and they should all be in jail. All those officials in New York. Yeah.
So do you want to take
block
calls?
It all the way up. What's that?
Do you want to take calls for the next 45 minutes? There's people asking me, can we take a call?
Sure.
Okay. So, well, look, this is the thing. Do you think that it does matter in terms of what's going on at CGS, what happened last week at Hanford? Do you think that is going to give any weight at all?
Oh, my goodness. How do you think the workers, they know they are finally coming out with a major lawsuit? This is interesting that this happened when the workers at that nuclear plant finally admitted how sick they are and how much cancer there is. And now this took place shortly after that, so that it's virtually in shutdown mode as far as that location for the spent fuel rods. And the workers trying to get it addressed There are health issues in the workers' comp from that region, not even providing health care cost coverage, and they're required to. That is the extent to which the cruelty and the effort to make things not appear as they are and not state the facts. That's to the extent that they have upset people's lives and invaded them. It's an invasion. But we have to keep talking and speaking out, because that's the only way to turn this thing around.
You know what? I tweeted to Governor Inslee something like that. I'm glad that our workers are safe. I'm like, how can you say that? Their job is, they are not safe working there. That's not a safe job. No. Like, how could he say that? Like, honestly, the way they treat the workers there is if their lives don't really matter. Like, you know, they let them, until they get sick, they let them work there. And then all they do is deny when they start getting sick. I mean, they don't ever own it, ever. There's not like a place that says, okay, we know you're going to get sick because you're working in a highly radioactive place, so we're going to give you extra benefits. We're going to make sure we're going to attend to all of your needs instead of denying it and letting you deny. I mean, imagine if they turned that ship around to where they just took care of that one step of caring about. That was the one thing, you know, Miss USA is a nuclear scientist that just graduated. Did you hear about this story from Delaware or something like that? And
yeah, Westinghouse they had Ronald Reagan first. Right?
Well, listen, she made a comment about how healthcare is not a right, how it's a privilege. Oh, Lord, everybody got all freaked out. Like, you know, she had to back that stuff up right away. But I commented, you know what? It's because she was trained by the nuclear science industry in the United States, where they do not care about human rights. They don't care about human life at all.
That's their pockets with all kinds of money. You know, she's probably weighs 4,000 pounds with the amount of money she's earned as Miss America now. I mean, look at Ronald Reagan. He was the representative of Westinghouse for years. Too cheap to meet her, blah, 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 you know? And he was elected president. Look at President Carter walking through 3 Mile Island, saying, we'll get this solved, don't worry, walking with paper slippers in radioactive water and not telling the truth. And he came out of the Navy, Trident submarine program.
Well, he's a nuclear scientist. He did understand it. He understood all that stuff. So I think the people that are training in the nuclear industry are brainwashed in their studies to believe, like President Carter, for example. Yes, he got cancer very recently. So the argument is, how many people in his family have been damaged by his exposure? This is what they do. They are convinced, these students, and I've chatted with them about this. These people that are pro-nuclear acknowledge it causes harm, but they say, it is worth the risk. That, I mean, to them, this is where they can call themselves priesties, because they have a nuclear priesthood attitude of, it's worth the risk. If your child gets sick or my child gets sick, it's worth the risk for the greater whole, because we have a medical industry that can help them have a, quote, normal life. They are like President Carter really in my view, I was shocked to find out that he was a nuclear physicist, because I always liked President Carter. And then to hear that he was at 3 Mile, when he went to 3 Mile Island, and understand that he understood what he was standing in. But I don't think they intentionally deny it. I think that they just don't, I think they're brainwashed. They're seriously, badly gaslit. They have no connection to reality when it comes to nuclear. Do you think that they consciously accept it? I don't. I mean, you've talked to people from Richland.
It's no irony that he was put up to run for president as a peanut farmer. There is no irony to that. He is a very calculating person, and he's trying to make amends for all the destruction he's done around the world as president. And he has a lot to live with in his own conscience and turn things around and speak to the truth. He really does.
Well, he has not come out about Fukushima at all, and he ought to. This is when I found out he was a scientist. and understood it
there's a
out.
perfect example.
I felt very betrayed. This was only about a year and a half ago, to be honest. Like, I really didn't understand it. Like, when I say I'm a perfect candidate for the Post-Ignorance Project, I am, because I bought the programming hook, line, and sinker. And the idea that he would actually understand this and know about it, I gave it some thought a lot. I think that these people are just completely convinced. I like when you talk to them up in Richland, they don't think they're doing humanity a horrible thing. They think they're helping. They think it's worth the risk, and that it is that our medical industry can help solve it. My science teacher at LCC, her dad worked at Hanford all of his life. And I said, great, how old was he? He retired from there. And I said, well, how old is he now? Oh, he died 2 years after he retired. And I'm like, don't you think that's related to Hanford? She's like, no, he could have got cancer from anywhere. He was 62. I'm like, look, at the time I was 57. I'm like, look, at 57, that's I feel close to 62. In fact, I'm almost going to be 62. That's not that old. I can't imagine asking somebody to oh, you can die now because you're 62. Like, you're old enough to go to pasture.
Yeah.
That's their thinking.
Well, it's like,
Nancy.
That race for the cure that they have in
Yes.
Portland every year, and how many thousands of women run around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to them on their picnic, and I started handing out all the information on the nuclear plant, CGS, Columbia Generating Station. And they shut me down so fast. They don't care about prevention. They're all about making money off of finding the cure. And all these women don't thoroughly examine it and don't prevent it. I mean, for heaven's sake, what does it take? These kinds of accidents are right in front of their faces. And I don't get it how they just shut down and do all this alternative promotion. I mean, it feels good. I know it's good for your body, certainly, to cleanse out any kind of things that invade our body. But don't start putting it in the first place, that the next generation has autism or all the side effects of what our cells
schizophrenia. Do you know that schizophrenia? I mean, that's what John Goffman said. Schizophrenia, diabetes, skin rashes, and endocrine problems. Those are the things that pop up first. Like, you're not going to get cancer right away. You're going to have a bunch of other stuff before you get there to cancer. And it's all related to your exposure to different radionuclides. And depending on your body, like, there's no pattern. Just like the breaking up of the atom, the illnesses are random. But you can see that they do cause, these specific isotopes cause specific diseases, right? So what do you think the real rates? So you contend that they are lying to us completely about the levels of radioactive contamination over those at that site?
The waste site?
Yes.
Yeah, they don't use the proper equipment for measuring in the soils and the ways that it can spread. They are not even close on measurement and proper measurement.
Well,
so
what do they use that's incorrect, and what is the correct thing then? If you make that statement, what's the correct thing?
Well, there's a certain kind of equipment that can measure. You measure air a certain way, then you can measure water. You can measure all kinds of different ways. And they knowingly are using an equipment that does not register properly. But you don't need all that. We have Fukushima as the example. We know all this. We have the knowledge of how horrible once it's escaped, and the fact that it's been demanded, and they were supposed to follow through, the U.S. Department of Energy, to put that waste, excavate it, get it out, and put it into other containers that at least for a short while will keep it contained. This is all a joke and a tragedy, and a horrible tragedy. And the workers are denied health care right on the site. Put those people sitting in their offices promoting this stuff, make them live on that site or take it to their yard. Why don't they live there? Why don't they keep saying that after their children get cancer or deformities? What is this insane cycle? And, I've lived to be 70 years old in spite of that exposure, but I've had all kinds of vessel problems. My daughter has vessel problems. We get high blood pressure very easily. we live on the edge of, okay, collapse. And why should we be even creating the waste that creates these massive problems for an industry in the United States that is outrageously corrupt and expensive? We've got to stop the cycle. And young people are recognizing this, and they should be encouraged. And we should encourage city council not to just say we're going into alternative funding, but to get that thing shut down as fast as possible.
And not just shut down. We can't just shut them down. See, this is what's happened out at San
Antonio. No, I'm talking about the nuclear plant, the nuclear electric plant.
You mean Columbia Generating Station?
Why add to the problem when you've proven that the problem is not over? You haven't solved the waste problem. Cut it out.
Well, it's only 10 miles, 15. You know, exactly how far is it? 10 to 15 miles away? I thought it was 15.
Pardon me again?
The Columbia Generating Station is how many miles away from Hanford?
10.
See,
that's beyond nuclear.
This is the really.
They are really in this.
This is the insane part about keeping the Columbia Generating Station open. They have this plutonium which is spewing out. We know it's spewing out. Now, do you think that it seems ridiculous to me that they covered the hole and they're saying, don't worry, no radioactivity escaped. That's not how radioactivity works, right?
That's right.
So,
you're absolutely right.
Well, why don't you?
And this is what the governor is espousing.
I mean,
the governor of the state.
You just put the dirt over the hole, but the radioactivity has still escaped because now they're saying that the integrity of those containers are still valid because they were buried in train cars, just like they were in St. Louis. That's what the government did.
Open flatbed cars is my knowledge of what those things are.
Oh, really?
You're talking spent fuel rods riding on open flatbed rail cars. So maybe somebody gave me misinformation, but I believe it.
Well, if that's the case, then it's been it doesn't matter whether the hole caved in or not, right? I mean, if it's open, if they're open cages, they've been sitting in that tunnel. That means that's why the wood was decayed so badly. I read the report that said in 1991, they had lost 30% of the integrity of the wood in the tunnel, and they were advised to move them or redo the wood. And I think they couldn't redo the wood because it was too contaminated. They couldn't go back in there. I think that's really the reason why
it's a major project. It is a huge, huge project, but it can be done, according to Jerry Paulette of Heart of America. And
but it costs a lot of money, which is what they'd have to give up. The licensee would have to pay for it, right?
Well, Westinghouse went bankrupt. They can't even provide parts for operating nuclear power plants because they've gone bankrupt. And so that means it's irrelevant, even if the NRC were functioning properly, that the backload on parts for these critical components are not available. Come on. The entire country should shut down those things. And we have the ability to do it, and it has been said for 20 years that we can do this. And it's still these horrible corporations preventing it. Control of Congress, control of state legislatures, lying through their teeth. I stopped them on the SMRs in not this recent session. I haven't had time to be there, but the last one, I helped stop them because of their ridiculous claims from Oregon State University that they had all the waste problems solved with the small modular reactors. And what they lied about was they don't stand alone, and they aren't just small individual units. You have to attach them in order for them to be cost effective to 10 more underground near our water systems. Hello, our drinking water. Yay, you are so helpful. And this is how it goes. And the money swings in. Our Senate Governor Kitzhaber gave him $200 million more to keep going with it. Do we have that kind of money? The state's in debt. We can't pay health care costs. This is designed insanity. And I'm going to keep saying it. Go ahead, lock me up, put me away. But you will not stop me saying that's exactly what it is. So they are hacking me. They are hacking me, but they are not stopping me because there's so many people aware now And the information is so great. That's what's really the beauty of it. And the answers are so well provided that it's ludicrous, just ludicrous. And it has proved out with its collapse and how difficult it is with this waste over a long term to keep protected from what we've created. So don't create it. And why are we sitting here while the Chancellor of Germany, invite her in and she'll instruct? Come on, what are you waiting for? Get it done, you know? What are we waiting for?
Well, look, he put in Rick Perry, Nancy. He has no intention. This wrecking ball crew, they are dismantling the United States and allowing, I mean, this whole thing with the nuclear waste. Imagine if we had a serious catastrophe with this guy at the helm here. He wouldn't know what to do at all. He has no clue. He's left our military to make the decisions about who lives and who dies in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's sending soldiers up. I think we now have 1,000 people in Syria, and he's not overseeing it. He's letting the generals do that. He is not even keeping up with it.
It shows you how the military-industrial complex, which Americans have not raised their voices. I went down to City Council in Portland, and they're in debt because of all the money we're pouring, 60% of our federal budget into the military. That is a huge part of the problem. And all we have to do, we got more votes than any of them, is turn it around. And get those corrupt machines out. Greg Palast just came out with a report. And by the way, I did call Greg Palast when this spent fuel problem started, and his comment to me was, well, looks like, Nancy, you're going to be the Incredible Hulk soon.
Well, that's what they're hoping. That's what they're hoping. You see, this is where we've been trained in our minds. Like this whole thing about the nuclear contamination, like what's going on in St. Louis? I mean, the way I made a video, I haven't posted it yet on my YouTube channel. I mean, yesterday was a hard day when I realized the way they screw things over and harm people. Like in St. Louis, finally, the legislators got a bill in St. Louis to help move some people out. Well, somehow they put in 2 poison pills. One, they included people from another area, which to be bought out for political reasons, that got put in. But it changed the dynamics of the move out, so that if all the residents moved, the CERCLA laws, because of CERCLA, the polluters could use the CERCLA laws and say, well, there's no more residents, we're not required to clean up anymore, and they could just stop cleaning it up and saying this is an industrial area. And they would only have bought it out in a 1-mile area. So you see the poison pill. So it barely passed. There was a lot of residents living in the area who opposed the bill because it was a poison pill. So it's so outrageous. I mean, we have people right now, we're talking about what's going on in Hanford, but frankly, there's people at much greater risk living in St. Louis. Not all homes, because they've worked hard in some areas, like the Bridgeton area. They've worked really, the Army Corps of Engineers is, quote, decontaminated, like what they've done in Fukushima. They did that for 18 years in that area. And a lot of people, they feel confident and trust these people. But this is like, we absolutely need an industry just to clean up the pollution in our country. We need scientists. We need our kids to become scientists.
We have the industry. We just have the wrong industries. That's the problem, that are educating our children in colleges. That's the problem. And until we correct that, it's just going to go in this cycle. And the U.S. is really, worldwide, kind of a joke. Because
it is now. It is now.
We were the designers of Fukushima. We were the ones that knew you should not put it in Japan and locate it there because of the dangers of natural weather.
I found an article on Westinghouse written by the Energy and Environment at the New York Times by Diane Cardwell. And she writes in here that many of the company's injuries are self-inflicted. Disastrous deal for the construction business that had intended to control costs and instead precipitated the events that led to the filing on Wednesday. Overall, Toshiba has been widely criticized for overpaying for Westinghouse. Now, that's intentional. They intentionally overpaid for it. The 2011 earthquake in Japan that led to the nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi plant renewed worries about safety. Westinghouse's problems are already reducing Japan's footprint in nuclear power, but the industry has nurtured it for decades. So there is nobody there's no company that's taking over creating parts. That's what this thing is saying, is that there's some facilities that are here in the United States, like Scana Energy in South Carolina and a consortium in Georgia led by Georgia Power, that is coming up for new contract terms because they're trying to figure out who's going to pay for the costs. They're estimating it's already $1 billion to $1.3 billion higher than originally expected. It would eventually exceed $8 billion overall. The filing of bankruptcy could terminate the contracts, and it would be difficult for the utilities to find. You know what would happen? I mean, in a way, maybe that would be great, because then these companies would be free of nuclear power because there's no one to turn them back on. But then there's no one there to take up the waste problem, like what's gone on, and like the just sheer negligence. And the United States just has to carry the burden, our tax dollars. Then the fight begins, like who's going to clean it up and who's going to pay for it. This is our fuse wrap. You know how little our fuse wrap budget has shrunk year after year. Hey, hold on. Mimi German's calling. I'm going to add her to the call.
Yeah.
Good morning. You're on the air with Lonnie Clark and the Age of Fission radio show. Is this Mimi? Hello? Hello? Nancy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. Well, we heard her. I did not hear her. So if she wants to call back, I'll link her back in. So you heard her. You were fine. Okay, good.
No,
a lot of times,
I didn't hear Mimi. I heard you, but I couldn't hear Mimi.
Okay, good. Well, because of the few times I've tried to get people in, I've disconnected them. This time I saw her there. So Mimi, if you want to call back, please do. Oh, here she is. She is calling back. So hold on. Good morning. You're speaking with Lonnie Clark in the Age of Fission radio show. Hello. So Nancy, you're on, right?
Yeah. There may be blockage, purposeful blockage.
Yes, there may be purposeful blockage. Here she is. She's being determined. I love Mimi. We love this. This is why we're activists. Hey, Mimi, this is Lonnie. Hello.
Hey. Hi.
Yay. Perseverance brings success. Go ahead.
There. I had to turn off the computer volume. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Well, thanks for the show. And have you been listening? Nancy Newel, who you introduced me to, is our guest today. And we're talking about the outrageousness of what's going on. I don't know if you've been listening, but it's outrageous. So what would you like to say?
I have been listening, and I wanted you to repeat, Lonnie, what you just found in that article, because I didn't know about that article, and that's news to me. And can you please repeat the read from that article?
From about the Scana Energy?
From the New York Times. From the New York Times.
But the business about the Scana Energy in South Carolina and the consortium in Georgia, led by Georgia Power, a unit of Southern Company, would face the possibility of new contracts, lawsuits, and absorbing losses that Toshiba and Westinghouse could not cover. Dennis Pendherney, a managing director for Fitch Ratings, who is the sector head of the United States Public Power Group, said that it was possible that the company's bankruptcy filing could terminate the contracts, and that it could be difficult for the utilities to find another builder to take them over. There's still quite a lot of work to be completed. The biggest challenge there is quite simply finding another suitable contractor who can complete the contract and have it completed as a quote unquote reasonable cost.
Right. To the tune of $2 billion, like they do at Hanford.
Or 3, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, everybody wants that $2 billion that Hanford gets, and then Hanford, of course, wants more.
This one says that the Department of Energy has authorized $8.3 billion in federal loan guarantees for the Georgia project.
Wow. So the thing that I've noticed, Nancy, I don't know if you've been following Susanna Frame I follow her on Twitter because it's the quickest way to receive all of her input regarding Hanford. And she put something out yesterday when Senator Cantwell went to Hanford on Sunday and was told directly, and there's a video of it, that Hanford can collapse again, and that we should know that. And they were telling the senator this. So this is, first of all, it's a big deal in that Hanford admitted that. Secondly, the issue here isn't that Senator Cantwell, what Senator Cantwell thinks the issue is. She thinks the issue is let's keep money flowing to Hanford. The issue is let's get independent oversight for where that money is going so that the two contractors, which are CH2M Hill, who Nancy mentioned earlier in the show, and Bechtel, actually do with that money what that money is intended to do. And without independent oversight, which is what I learned in 2012 from Tom Carpenter from Hanford Challenge, that is the key missing ingredient of all of this. There's no oversight. And without oversight, Nancy and I have been watching this. Nothing gets done. Nothing, except for an ask for more money. And this is across the board for all nukes anywhere, which is what you were just reading about.
Yeah. Yep. Huge moneymaker.
Well, that's
so when we
what
talk about
say on Friday was that this is really just a ploy for money. Every year at budget time, we see an accident. But what do you think of this idea? What Nancy was suggesting, that they're not even using the right types of tools to measure the radioactive contamination out there, because you have to use different tools.
Well, yeah. I mean, they don't do that anywhere. You know, they don't take proper tests. We know that from CGS, from the Columbia Generating Station, which is 10 miles from, the tank farm. And I don't even think it's 10 miles. I've been up there, and I don't think it's 10 miles. But anyway, when CGS covered up a crack inside the reactor unit, and they covered that crack up for a long time. They had known about it since 2001. But they didn't tell anyone about the crack until, Nancy, I don't remember what year it was. It was a few years ago, before I stopped talking to Chuck. So when they, for good reasons, that's a whole other show, Lonnie. So when we finally found out about the crack, in looking back on any archives about that crack, we could find, and we did find, that they knew about the crack since 2001. In order to know about the danger of that crack, which is getting worse every single moment that reactor is running, they never took the proper testing for the entire building, the entire Columbia Generating Station. And that also is what I learned and what Nancy learned from Paul Gunter. So there's a way to test for how deep that crack was within the concrete, not the length, which was visible through certain kinds of testing. But they needed to basically ultrasound the entire building to get the depth of the crack. They never did that. We demanded that they do that. There was a legal suit that they do that, I think. I think that might have been something that we had done. I can't remember at this point, but they still didn't do that. And they said there's no need to do that because the crack is so small. And when you would respond, well, you don't know the size of the crack because you don't know how deep that crack is. This is in the reactor unit. So we know what Nancy's saying is correct. Even if they had the units out there, which they don't, you can't test for tritium by an easy means. You need really, really high-end equipment for that. They don't have it. Why would they? To prove that it's as dangerous as we all know it is? They just want money.
What do you think of that, Nancy?
Oh yeah. I mean, look at Westinghouse. They thought they could do this forever. Well, look what's happened. But they're going to be bailed out. I mean, the American public really has to get active as much as possible on this. Because
I don't think people understand it, though. Like with Westinghouse being bankrupt, people don't understand the financial burden that's going to put on our already burdened economy. ours. We're going to have to pay up. The American people, we have 47 Westinghouse nuclear reactors in the United States, and Westinghouse went bankrupt. So what does that do to all those facilities?
Right. And the point was what Nancy said earlier. It's not just that Westinghouse went bankrupt and the people have to pay for that bankruptcy. It's that Westinghouse also, GE, put out bad equipment in these nuclear power plants. And who's going to change if anyone even gave a damn, meaning the management and workers at nuclear power plants, if they even cared, which they don't, about these faulty pieces of, it could be a screw, it could be a bolt, it could be something, it could be anything. All of these things matter in a nuclear power plant. When they get damaged or old or just worn out due to, nuclear bombardment, who's going to create the next part for that?
And this is the other part we know for a fact. They put in the bad parts in these things all the time. They put in parts that barely fit, barely work. Who knows if they're going to have any continuity of memory of what's gone on where?
Nancy, remember when they put the part in at the Columbia Generating Station? They put it in upside down and backwards.
What?
Yes.
And then it was for water flow at the reactor, yes. And they couldn't undo it.
Well, how did they fix it?
They had to they did a partial shutdown. They needed to do a complete shutdown. Maybe they did, Nancy. Maybe that was one of the full shutdowns. I have all these notes on Radcast. But they had to do some form of a shutdown to get the part off. And it took like a crane. It took so much work to get this part off because it was part of the fuel pool.
Wow.
Yep. They put it on backwards and inverted.
Wow. And how much? And did they charge the American government for that one? Did we pay for that as taxpayers too? We did, I guess, in our rates, right?
Yeah. Well, here's another good example. Did you hear about what happened in France with a part that they covered up for decades? And they've got nuclear plants all over the place. And the faulty part leads to rupture in a nuclear power plant. And they finally are coming out with the truth, the corporation that covered it up.
Wow.
So France has a huge agenda on closing all those plants.
Yeah, France they've done bad. If you look at France, they're dotted with nuclear power. It's really sad what they've done to their country. They have bought it hook, line, and sinker. But this is the thing we were talking, Mimi. What's your response to me when I say this? That I think a lot of these people, I think they're just brainwashed to believe that we're going to find a solution and it's not that bad. I mean, all these little nuclear scientists that are coming out of every scientific community, I attempted to talk to Mary Wood about this a long time ago, and she's like, "That's not our problem. Fukushima's not our problem." Well, Hanford's our problem.
I have to inject here because the reason I brought up the French, who's in Oregon getting money for the small modular reactors?
The SMRs. Yeah.
Yeah, but which corporation? From what part of the world?
Areva? Was it Areva?
It's a French company.
Well, let's see if I can Google it.
They're going bankrupt. They're hugely bankrupt, and they're over here because here the people have not risen up fast enough or enough. And we have got to stop that. We've stopped it once. We're going to stop it again. But it did pass the House of the state of Washington. So, yeah, this is a very important part of the agenda. And so it really is a huge blemish for them to even talk about the waste problem. And there it is right in front of them. So we've really got a very powerful piece of information, unfortunately, but to get it around, that why would we put more money into anything that's nuclear?
It's called EDF. The French company is called EDF.
Yeah.
But part of the answer to your question, Lonnie, is like in Washington, for instance, we don't have the wherewithal, we don't have the education among resistors and protesters who are environmental protesters to know what the right thing is to do, because there are people who are as prominent as Bill McKibben telling people that small modular reactors are actually a good thing, that nuclear energy is green, And sure, nuclear reactors can fail, which he never says, but that's sort of it's sort of the yeah, sure, but it doesn't happen often. And he doesn't even go there. He's just like, nukes are okay. And they are green. And he won't talk about the way that we get nuclear reactors. He won't talk about uranium processing and mining and native land and genocide. And yet here we have Shalma Sawant, who is such a beloved, person on the Seattle City Council, an environmentalist who can't stand up for one fucking second to say, we need to shut down the Columbia Generating Station, and with all my power, I, Shalma Sawant, am going to teach all of you, my people out there, the environmentalists of Washington, that we're all going to band together to shut this shit down. She has never come together to say that. And if she's not going to do it as an environmentalist, and Bill McKibben is going to continue his lies about nuclear power being green, and even worse, his refusal to speak about shutting down nukes, his silence, we're not going to get anywhere fast. These are two hugely prominent figures, Shalma Sawant and Bill McKibben in Washington State.
Well, this is the thing. Have you made contact with them directly? Do you know these people directly?
Nancy and I could go on a whole show about this. Shalma Sawant's office will not talk to us. There's gates that are miles long.
Wow, really?
We've done it. We've done the gateway. Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. There's a group called Climate Solutions now. They changed their name because they're embarrassed about not being able to stop the nuclear stuff, and they want to admit it publicly. But, gas. Then gas will be such a huge problem.
Do you guys, do you think that Hanford is going to do their Hanford tour? Hanford started doing cleanup tour sites. They have Hanford site cleanup tour dates. The upcoming date is May 23rd, May 24th, June 6th, June 7th, 14th, 20th, 27th. Do you think that they're going to continue with these tours? There's nothing on this page that said the tours have been canceled because of the recent thing. You think they're going to continue with their tours?
If they don't, it's a recognition that there's something wrong. I'm with Nancy. Of course they will.
Wow.
But
that's outrageous.
The very important thing is to support the workers and get them on the air about their lawsuits and opening up to the fact of all the cancers. That's a huge thing.
Yes.
I mean, the state AFL-CIO, most of them believe close that plant. So,
well, if you know any workers who want to speak on
political activities,
Well, this is the thing, like a lot of the St. Louis people, they don't want to speak on air because they don't want to mess up their lawsuit.
But they are speaking, and they are suing.
Oh, great.
Right now in the state of Washington. So I think that's something that we can certainly nurture, support, and expand.
Okay. And I take the
Paul
challenge.
Paul Hawken has pulled back on nuclear, is my understanding, as far as he really doesn't even want to discuss. He pulls away from it. He's not doing what he did in the past. That's interesting. But yeah, Climate Solutions is 250, I think, environmental organizations in the entire Northwest that support this kind of, oh no, we have to solve climate change first. For heaven's sake.
Well, for
uranium mining alone, the amount of carbons that comes out of that is horrible. So,
well, we have 30 seconds left, Nancy. Thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for filling our heads with lots of information about how these guys double think and double lies and talking about Westinghouse. Thanks, Mimi, for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the show, both of you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, right back at you.
Well, look, you guys, put your courage feet on. These are activists who show us how to do it. So if they can take action, you can take action, because that's what it's going to take. All of us doing something. We can't just listen to a radio show and go about our days. Change one or two things in your lives and we can make a difference. Talk to you guys later.